pretty much all of us that have gotten to use it have had the same criticisms, which were, hey, this doesn't have enough tools. This isn't red enough.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Golden Hour podcast. Today, I am unfortunately not joined by my co-host Connor McCaskill, but we are joined by the one, the only, Brandon Talbot. Welcome,
What's up,
Brandon.
B?
Dude, yeah, I was trying to get Connor on this. Unfortunately, he is just totally swamped with work. This week has been a crazy week of releases.
Yeah.
We had the new iPhone 17. We had the Canon C50. Last week, we had the Hasselblad X2D Mark II.
Yep.
And then now the one that we're going to talk about today, which I'm really excited to talk to you in particular about, the Nikon ZR. But yeah, crazy week.
It is bananas. I feel bad for channels that are way bigger than me that just get thrown all of these things. Like I was really fortunate just to get one, and it was already kind of like overwhelming.
Well, let's talk about it. Your video is so much fun to watch.
Oh, thanks,
that's
dude.
That's why I reached out right away and wanted to talk to you, because I'm really interested in this camera. You and I are on the older spectrum of filmmakers compared to a lot of these Gen Zers running around. Yeah. And we remember the original Red Scarlet. Do you remember that when that first was announced? And to me, the dream was always to have red in the palm of your hand and at an affordable price. I believe Jared said 4K for 4K. That was the big sell
3K.
for the Scarlet.
So
3K.
The Scarlet was 3K for 3K. And then it's funny, obviously that never came to be, but I think he was talking to Balcom about this, but there's like a warehouse full of them that never went anywhere.
They didn't sell all of them. Oh my goodness. So
There's
that was
crazy stuff that they made that never came out, or just
that was
bombed so hard.
Gosh, what year was that? Like 2010 or something. So yeah, and it was such a big deal because at the time Red Epics were, or the Red One, I guess. But I guess the Red Epic MX was out at that time. It was the industry standard, and Alexa, I guess, and film, of course, in 2010, but Red was the real disruptor in the Hollywood space, and Fincher in particular was kind of leading that charge with The Social Network being shot on the Red One, and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was, I think, all MX.
Bookie Eli was a big one shot on Red One.
And so at that time, any up and coming filmmaker was just drooling over Red, and it was completely unobtainable. Because you're talking, $50,000, and when you're a young filmmaker, that just seemed impossible. So we all had to deal with the 5D Mark II and the 7D and the DSLR craze, which in of itself was revolutionary. But then the promise of the Scarlet, it turned out that the 3K for 3K was not true. I think when it's all said and done, I think it was like 6,000 or something to get it up and running, and that was still unobtainable for most people. And the Scarlet was a real kind of bad version of a Red anyways. And then they did it again with the Red Raven. They tried again for something cheaper, but that one also had a ton of compromise.
Is that the one that they used to sell in Apple?
Yes, it came in a little Pelican case. I believe that was also like $6,000 or something. So, but it was a more full featured camera, and it was small and compact, but it was a windowed sensor. So it wasn't even Super 35. It was like in between a Super 16 and a Super 35. So putting an 18 to 35 Sigma lens on it was still cropping in even on that. Just there's always been compromises, but here we are today with the Nikon Z.
The ZR.
The ZR. R for red, I assume.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that promise has finally arrived for only $2,100, and that's one of my favorite bits from your video. When you find out the price of this thing,
you're
like freaking out.
Or at the Nikon guy, I was like, no.
Yeah. That's the so. Anyways, that's like the whole setup here. What's your ultimate kind of overall thought on this camera as a Red user? Because that's why I got you in here. Tell us what kind of cameras you own, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on this new camera.
For sure. First of all, I just want to say thanks to Kyle Meshnook, because if it wasn't for Kyle, I wouldn't have been because I wasn't like an NDA'd approved person.
Okay.
But Kyle got me on as one of his crew, which was
nice.
How we got in there. But
love Kyle. We all love Kyle.
Props to Mesh. As far as what I'm shooting on, it's so funny because we were talking about those early like DSMC2s and the astronomical costs. Like the Red Monster was like 80 grand. And earlier this year, I was able to pick one up for about like 7,000 for like the whole
Oh my
kit. So
goodness.
I'm currently live streaming. We're doing this
Yeah,
podcast on a Monstro, but I've had the
that's
original
amazing.
Komodo OG. That was my first red. That kind of like did changed everything for me. I knew about red much earlier on, but I wasn't really into video. I was into movies,
Hmm.
and I really wanted to know what they were shooting movies on because that just like that technology just really intrigued me. But it wasn't until much later that I got into this space, and the Komodo was like, holy crap. All I had remembered was Monstros and everything else were 50, 60, 70, $80,000. This is $6,000. And it was a stretch for me to buy it, but
Yeah.
stoked I did. Really kind of changed my career. Then I got the KX because that was more of like an A cam. But currently, I mean, I have some photo cameras that are just like for photo, but I also have an S5 Mark II. Awesome camera. Holy crap, that's such a great camera.
The Lumix.
Yeah, the Lumix. And then I've
That's
got
what I'm
the,
shooting on right now.
oh, it's such a good camera. And then the
Hmm.
Lumix S1R Mark II. And then Nikon let me borrow the Z6 III, which is
Hmm.
the ZR is kind of like a high powered version of that. So as a red shooter, I like as much as I love the ZR, let me set expectations because I think Nikon might have set like an unreasonable expectation by putting cinema on the back of that camera. Because there's no way I would call it a cinema camera. It doesn't have the IO that you would expect out of a cinema camera. But also, I like from a spec perspective, it does compete with an the what's the new Canon, the
The
C50.
C50.
It
Hmm.
competes with the FX3 in some specs, but I
Yeah.
don't know if that is like I just don't see them being the same type of camera. And out of their press release, they did mention that this is going to be a competitor to the FX3, and I guess it does in terms of image quality and frame rate and resolution, full frame. But I just don't see this being like a production camera like both of those cameras could be, if that makes sense.
Really.
Yeah, I
Yeah. I
think
mean.
it can make some incredible images, and it's
Hmm.
built like an absolute tank. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I see it as like at least an FX3 where it's like an industry standard, like we need a
Hmm.
small camera for production.
That's interesting. Yeah. You know what I think it really is it's and I've heard this from insiders from Sony is that there are tons of YouTubers and quote unquote content
Hmm.
creators who shoot on the FX3, and that's partly why they made the FX2 was for content creators to have the ability to take better stills because people who are on Instagram or doing thumbnails for
Hmm.
YouTube wanted better stills. So the FX2 was kind of their answer to that. But they're saying that it's for filmmakers because it's the prestige that every content creator kind of wants to have of like being a quote unquote filmmaker. But the
Hmm.
reality is that content creators are their own niche, but they don't really like being called influencers or YouTubers. They want to be called filmmakers. So
Yeah, I'm
I kind
okay.
of think this is a secret. I know it's pretentious and stupid, right? But I wonder if this is sort of an intentionally like redified thing for the prestige. And then obviously we do get R3D, which in of itself is a big deal to have in a hybrid camera. This is what all of us have been kind of hoping for ever since the Nikon acquisition happened.
Hmm.
So there obviously are the benefits of that. And if you're not familiar with R3D, maybe you could walk us through why it's such a great codec and why it's such a great RAW format. But yeah, I think honestly, this is a great like YouTuber camera, and the
Oh,
Nikon
for sure.
ZF, the Nikon ZF has really taken off a
Hmm.
lot. Like that came out and made a splash, but like what's been interesting about watching all these other cameras that have come out since then that are kind of the retro infused cameras, it seems like the ZF has gained even more popularity as time has gone on, as other companies have made their own kind of versions of it. Fuji keeps kind of
Hmm.
releasing half baked things and kind of not giving everything that we want. Like, I still think Fuji needs to make a proper X Pro successor. I think they had the X Pro 3 was the last
I
one they
think
did,
that
which
would
was
crush.
really
Yeah, an X
old.
Pro 4 at this point, I think would crush.
But regardless, like this to me is really compelling because Nikon has sort of been the like underdog slash like making really good stuff thing with the
Mhm.
ZF line, and now with the R3D and the photo video switch with a more of an emphasis on the video with this camera. Yeah, I think you pointed it out in your video. This is more kind of in the ZV line of things from Sony rather than an FX line. But they're marketing it as like an FX camera, but this is almost a competitor to the full frame, was it ZVE1
Yeah,
from Sony in a way.
I think so. It's got those kind of creator-ish things. I mean, the big screen is super nice if you're filming yourself, if you're trying to be quick and filming other people. It's got fantastic autofocus, but it's also got, that crazy like five-way capsule with like audio treatments built in. And that to me is like, hey, if you don't want to use a microphone, like the only time you're not using a microphone is if it's like really close to your face. So I think it's got a lot of creator-ish things built into the camera where I do find it kind of unusual that they would market this as like a competitor to an FX3 because I don't really see the FX3 like this. But the one thing I try to do whenever we get into these like comparisons is if you think about it, like the American market, as big as it is, still pales in comparison to like what they're selling in Japan or what they're selling in China. And like that market's like way bigger and they're doing way more sales from those markets than they are here. And I've got to imagine that that probably drives a lot of like how they design things. I would say the ZR, if you remove the R3D from it, this is still a fantastic camera. It shoots an awesome image. Dude, it was impossible for us to get it to overheat. It was 98 degrees on the day. All of us were dying from heat exhaustion, but it was just a big open reflector. Like we were on white sand. The sand was probably 120 degrees, and we ran the cameras on and off. I don't think we ever turned them off, but they were recording on and off for 5 hours at 6 frames or 6K, 60 frames a second. We didn't get a single overheat warning. So they're built like a tank. They're weather resistant, just the small compact body. They're super fast, easy to use. Like I said, fantastic autofocus, internal 32-bit float. So even if you take the R3D out of it, this is a fantastic camera.
Yeah, I would choose it over this at this point. I'm holding up the S9. The S9, even though it's a ton of fun, and they're cheap, you can get these now for like $1,000 on
Mm-hmm.
eBay if you really want one.
Yeah.
It's just lacking some of the pro features that I, as a kind of enthusiast nerd, wish that this thing had. And to me, I have enjoyed using this camera as like a dad cam,
Mm-hmm.
but the Lumix lens lineup has been really lacking in the like compact lens category.
Yeah.
So you have to go with like a M mount lens or a manual focus lens if you want something small, or use this really crappy 18-40 zoom, which is what I have on here right now. I use this just because it fits perfectly on here, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a garbage lens.
Yeah.
But Nikon has those great compact, even retro infused lenses that pair so well on the ZF.
Yeah.
Obviously, those would go great on the ZR, the 28 millimeter 2.8, which is a tiny little pancake lens, and then the 40 millimeter f2, which is also a pancake lens. So to me, forget about even the R3D, like you said, and switch over to photo mode. I've got a better, and it's the sensor from the which camera is it from, the Z6 III?
All the way up until basically D-Day, I was calling Jeff from Nikon trying to get some confirmations on things just to make sure I got it like all right. And I
Yeah.
asked him, I was like, "Is this the same sensor from the Z6 III?" And he was like, "Architecturally, it's the same, but it's different."
But the Z6 III is $2,600, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's the S1 II is the same sensor as well, and that one's $3,100. So even whatever it is, it's still $1,000 cheaper essentially than these other alternatives if you like that sensor, which is a great sensor.
Hmm.
So you get a great sensor in a compact body with a better screen.
Yeah.
With you still get the IBIS, which the C50 from Canon is missing IBIS now, which I'm okay with because Canon's stabilization's garbage. It just looks so bad. I'm glad they got
And they
rid of
have a
it.
lot of great lenses with, Stabe in it.
They're Yeah, their optical stabe is best in class in my opinion. I think they've figured out for years that in lens stabilization is
Hmm.
really good, but their IBIS system just looks all warpy and
It's
wobbly.
warpy for
So,
sure.
and Nikon has they need to work on their stabilization a little bit more. But what was your experience with the stabilization on the ZR?
Pretty darn
After,
good. It took some noodling from Jeff to kind of like get the perfect settings,
mm-hmm.
but to kind of like follow up on this thing to kind of like set I guess, the right precedent.
Yeah.
I think Nikon is in a really interesting place with the ZR. I think the ZR is supposed to ship, I think October 20th was the date I
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah, that's
given.
what it says on B&H. Yep.
Right now, the thing that's making the ZR just a great video camera that could take it to like, holy crap, this is a legit camera, are a bunch of tools.
Mm-hmm.
And they are in like the exact fork in the road moment that I'm hoping they listen to all the criticisms, because pretty much
Mm-hmm.
all of us that have gotten to use it have had the same criticisms, which were, hey, this doesn't have enough tools and this isn't red enough from like
Mm-hmm.
what makes red lots of fun, what makes it really good besides the codec. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping Nikon listens to that and adds false color and maybe adds
Yes.
some more red type of tech, like the stoplights and the goalposts, maybe edge focus peaking. The red control app, that's the one thing I'm harping on them. I'm like, guys, if you want this to be a creator camera, the red control app turn like the KX and the Komodo into solo operator camera heaven. Like that app is so good. So I'm hoping that Nikon sees these videos and they're like, okay, we'll do it. They got to lean into the red a little bit more.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I loved about your review, and why I think everybody should check it out. Because again, Brandon is very, very familiar with red. He's one of the few creators other than MKBHD who like actually shoots everything in red.
Mm-hmm.
So you really understand like the firmware and the reasons why you like it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some tools that you mentioned like the what's it called, the edge
Yeah,
focus
edge.
peaking, which is a really unique way to do focus peaking. It's basically like an X-ray for your focus, and it looks like it's just literally the best way to manually focus. And this camera with vintage lenses is going to pair beautifully because you can use any adapter, and it's
Yeah,
got the stabilization built in. So having that massive screen with edge focus peaking will be incredible. You're right that a lot of like when you switch to photo and video on the Canon C50,
mm-hmm.
it goes from the photo menu mode to the Canon cinema menu mode when you're in the video mode. And I feel like that's exactly what the ZR should have. When
Dude,
you go to video, you're in
yes.
essentially red UI. And then when you switch to photo, you're in Nikon UI.
I, I was Brandon Washington, who we're both friends with. B
Yes, good
Wash was
friends.
doing his like the rumors of the ZR had just started to percolate during like Cinegear, and we were all staying together.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, we don't know how it's gonna do it. And I was like, do it like the R5C. Have like Nikon be the photo because that's what they
Mm-hmm.
know, and have
Of
Red
course.
be the video. And when I was talking to the Nikon rep when I got to shoot this thing, I asked him, I was like, what's the possibility of you guys doing this? And they were like, why would we do that? Like all of our people know the Nikon menu. And I'm like, well, I get that, and there would be a learning curve, but Red's menu is just so easy that the learning
Mm-hmm.
curve is virtually nothing. And then everything going forward is just easier. Like my
Yeah.
ultimate dream list would be lean into that, like separate it, like just Nikon be the photo, Red
Yeah.
be the video, and this thing would rock.
Oh yeah, for sure. But like all that aside, I'm thinking back to 2010 when whenever the Scarlet came out and I was an up and coming teenage filmmaker. Uh this is a dream come true. Like, it's a 6K full frame
Yeah.
stabilized sensor and a camera body the size of like two or three iPhones stacked up against each other. Um, and you can adapt any lens you want, including PL lenses. I hope that there's
Sony
probably better lenses, better anamorphic support. I don't know what the anamorphic options were, but
zero.
you know, zero.
That's
Okay.
that's a big one that a lot of us were like, listen, it doesn't cost you anything. It really doesn't cost you anything to put it in there. Like if some people don't want it, that's fine. But there's a ton of us that do. Like we really need anamorphic support. And there's a good chance that OpenGate will come to it. What Nikon told me was we love an update. Their approach was we want to wait and see and hear what the fans want. In my brain, I was like, but you kind of know what we want. Like they're doing this for a
Well,
while. We're very vocal about it. Like, you know what we want. But I would just say to anybody watching this, if they want a ZR, but it doesn't have the things that you want it to have, as long as it's not hardware based or like, ergonomically based, like let them know, get very vocal and be like, hey, I want OpenGate. I want anamorphic support because this camera can handle it.
And I can see how their engineers and developers were like, let's just get this out and then we'll fix it later.
Yep.
Like it's already running. You've got R3D on it, and yeah, all those features. I guess if we're gonna make a list to go down, it would be support for the Red Control app, which
That's
I've
a
also
big one
used.
for me.
And it's fantastic. It's better than, you guys got to understand, like if you've used other camera apps, it's not like that. It's basically like, imagine your screen on your camera being ripped off and put in your phone with the exact same usability. That's what it is. Like you have all the usability that you would have on the camera in terms of menus, and even the latency between what's being seen on the camera and what's on the app is insane. Like it's almost like having a monitor, even though it's wireless.
There's 3 different ways to hook the phone or an iPad. You can actually run multiple. This was fun. I had an iPhone, I had an iPad, and an Apple Vision Pro all connected to the app at the same time, just to like see what I could do.
Yeah.
You can connect to the Wi-Fi using your house and run it that way, which gives you almost zero latency.
That's
or
amazing.
you can run the Wi-Fi off of the camera, so you can basically remote it from anywhere, even if you don't have Wi-Fi in a building. Or for at least the KX, like it's got a USB port in the back, and you can just plug your phone, if you have an iPhone, plug it directly in there, and now you have a zero latency like camera to phone connection.
That's fantastic.
One thing a lot of people don't realize is, as David said, you can do anything on the camera from the phone or the iPad, but you can actually do more through the app than you can on the camera. Like you can do your own iris pulls, you can do your own focus pulls, you can like set up remote triggers, you can run it off of a computer as like a trail cam. Like there's a ton that you can do through the app that you actually can't do on the camera.
That's so cool. So I mean, it'd be awesome if they would enable that, but I guess on the other hand, it would make sense that is something that does differentiate to buying a real Red, I guess too. But I guess that's going to be their own decision, is like, what's the line that we're going to allow and not allow. But I guess another list of things that I think are practical and realistic would be like false color and some of the exposure tools that are on Reds, like the stoplight would be really cool. The focus peaking assist would be cool. If you could do a Red menu and a Nikon menu, and if you're like really concerned that people are going to get confused who are like amateurs who've never used Red, which I would assume most people buying this probably have never used a Red before. I get that. Maybe it could be a thing that you turn on and off, that way, there's like a beginner mode for those who don't want to mess with it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual camera itself, like I wish that it did have full-size HDMI, but I get that they're making a compromise on the size. I mean, the S9 also has a micro HDMI. I would assume that's just because of the size. So, whatever. And
they're banking on that monitor, because it's not even a screen, it's a monitor. Like that monitor is so good that I don't think they really see in any other situation or scenario where you would want to attach anything into it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't know if they've thought about live streaming or something else being into that port, but as I told them, I was like, this is a liability. I won't even use it. I think they're just thinking this monitor is so good, nobody will ever want to run an external monitor on it.
Sure.
And I get that, but it is a little, blinders up.
Yeah, yeah. But they obviously can't change that. Um, but when it comes to R3D, can you explain to the viewers, especially those who have maybe never
Yeah.
used R3D, why R3D is so special? And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they have a very exclusive patent.
Yeah, they have a patent. I'm not going to get into the patent, but essentially the reason why R3D is so great is it is both chock full of information, but it's a very small file size compared to something else like ProRes. So while you're shooting RAW at really high resolutions with 16-bit color, that's RAW, meaning you can go in and change the ISO later, you can go in and change the white balance later. Like one thing shooting red did for me was I could start worrying about, I'm not very technical and I forget a lot of things. So it was a camera that kind of like aided in my horrible forgetfulness. And it allowed me to just like shoot and focus on the composition and the shooting and what I wanted to shoot. And later I could go back in and change white balance or I could change ISO. But even though the file sizes are pretty big, if you were to compare them to other like ProRes files, pretty they're pretty small, and you get a ton of different compression ratios. So if you don't want to shoot at like the highest compression, and you want to shoot at the lowest, like these file sizes get quite small. So the nice thing about the ZR, it's a 12-bit instead of a 16-bit file, but those file sizes have been reduced even more so. Um, the only thing about it is there's no longer an ability to select which kind of compression you want out of this new R3D NE. It's just there's one compression level. I think it's the highest. It's probably HQ, and that's all you get. Um, for me, red does have kind of an interesting workflow because you pull the file in and it's like a bunch of files and it's weird and there's no like thumbnails. That's maybe my biggest grievance about like red workflows is they're really difficult because you can't see any thumbnails. But I've never worked with an easier codec. You can put an 8K, like my Monstro 8K 60. I can throw like 3 of those on my M1 Max and edit that no problem. I remember when I bought the Canon R5, I tried the R5s raw and it like bricked my computer like instantly. Like red is just the sweetest, smoothest codec you'll ever use to edit.
Yeah, and it's been like that for years, and they've had such a long history of optimizing this codec and all the NLEs from Final Cut to Resolve to Premiere, and of course Avid. We
Hmm.
can't exclude them. Run it, beautifully, especially on Apple Silicon. So,
Yeah.
um, and that compared to even ProRes RAW, which is obviously Apple's version of it, because Red has such an exclusive patent on compressed RAW, everybody else has had to kind of re-engineer compression algorithms, and they're nowhere near as efficient.
Hmm.
So ProRes RAW, Blackmagic RAW, even Nikon RAW, although Nikon RAW got eerily close to R3D RAW, which is why they got sued, which is then why Nikon bought Red. So it's a whole story in of itself. But um, all the other RAW codecs, even if they're compressed, and you have to have compressed, by the way. If you have uncompressed
Cinema
RAW,
DNG is whew,
yeah, it would be you'd
huge.
go through a terabyte in a day very quickly.
Yeah.
So you have to have compressed RAW for video because you're shooting at high frame rates compared to just taking stills. But anyways, even ProRes, which is Apple's codec, which they uh, also announced this week, the new
Yeah.
iPhone 17 Pro can shoot ProRes RAW, which is just insane.
Wild.
That's pretty exciting, and I'm sure filmmakers are going to experiment with that, and maybe even Apple will shoot an entire series for Apple TV Plus on an iPhone. I could definitely see that happening, which is why they would do a lot of these kind of pro things.
Yeah.
I would imagine, but anyways, yeah, the R3D is just more compressed, and yet it still retains all the information. it's essentially magic. I don't know how they're doing it, because
Yeah.
when you get a 6K R3D file, it can sometimes be smaller in size than like a 1080p 10-bit file from a different camera. So the files are so much easier to manage,
Hmm.
and but then you get the beauty and the kind of freedom to tweak your white balance and exposure later. But even if you
And there's
shot
more to
everything,
that too. You can go into like
yeah,
saturation, you can go into shadow, contrast, tint. Like you can get really granular with everything depending on what you want to do.
exactly. And there's more to it, yeah, than just like fixing your mistakes. Like having raw video allows you to in Resolve isolate, like a window that's maybe overexposed, and because all that exposure information is there, it might look clipped straight out of camera, but then you start to pull down the exposure in just that one region, and boom, all that information is still there.
Hmm.
And it's not affecting any other aspect of your image. You're just able to window off the window, for example. And then R3D also allows you to use all of the color profiles that Red has developed over the years. Red
Yep.
Color 3, is that the most recent one, or what's
Oh
the
man,
most
I don't
recent?
know.
I don't know, but they have all these different, it's
Like
not
the
even
the
really a
color
LUT. It's
pipeline
like,
right now is IPP2.
okay, cool.
I think they went all the way up to red color 4. I think that's on
That
this
sounds like
camera.
something my son would say. Is like, I got
IPP2.
I got to go pee pee. I go IPP too.
Yeah. I don't even know what the acronym stands for, but I'm pretty sure it went
Picture profile, I'm
red
sure, but
color up to 4, and now we're in IPP2.
okay. But
It gets very confusing. Like red
but
wide
the
gamut,
beauty,
log 3G10. Like it gets kind of nuts.
yeah, the cool thing about Red Color is that you could take, in theory, a shot that you filmed 10 years ago on a Red 1 and apply the most current
Hmm.
Red Color gamut to it, and you get like somewhat decent color. At least it matches modern cameras. So
Yeah.
the reason for this is that you can shoot on multiple Red cameras, use the same color profile on all of them. Even if you shot a different profile when you were filming, you can change it later, and then now all of them match perfectly,
Yeah.
depending on whatever profile you pick. But they've done a really good job with their color science, and it makes it so easy to just kind of ship it with very little effort. So it's great to see that on the Nikon. So yeah, I
And,
think it's just
yeah.
overall it's pretty exciting. Even though there are some kind of software things that I think we'd love to see changed, right?
It's definitely an exciting first take. Like this is their first stab at it, and right now it's like 95% Nikon, only 5% red. It gets me really excited. I'm definitely getting one. I might get a couple. Um, but no, it's just like I've honestly, like when I got done shooting with it, it really made me rethink my kit. Like the size to performance ratio makes me go, is it really worth it for me to bring the Monstro out into the middle of the redwoods along with a KX and an S1R Mark II? Because that took two Pelicans and a backpack, whereas I could bring one backpack and have three of these cameras and get pretty close. Not like, not 100%, but like 85%. And on YouTube, but like maybe just the freed up weight and space and tripod size, like maybe that makes it worth it. But it really does get me excited for their next thing. Like when do we get the Nikon Z8 that's maybe got 16-bit instead of 12-bit, or something like that, like a little more 3500 to like 4500 camera, where they're like,
Yeah.
all right, let's lean into this red thing and go pretty hard. That really excites me.
And then, do you know, this is kind of random, but does it allow for an external flash?
Oh, dude, I have no idea. It's an electronic shutter.
It's
I
a
know
hot
that there's
shoe.
no mechanical shutter,
Yeah, I'm
but
looking at B&H. It says a shoe mount is one intelligent hot shoe. So that would make you think that it does trigger
it's
a flash.
yeah, it's got the hot shoe. I know they have an electronic shotgun that's coming for it, and that shotgun has a tally light, so it's kind of like the Sony's where you just plug it in and there's no cord, which is freaking rad. I can't wait for that. I think DJI is making an adapter that'll work for this.
Yeah.
There was no confirmation, but there was optimistic smirky smiles when I asked if a EVF could be coming.
Ooh, that'd be cool. Yeah, yeah.
Um, but
That
we'll
would be
see.
cool.
Yeah. What was I gonna say?
But you don't know about a flash.
I
Because I
don't know
think,
about flash. No.
again, from a like dad cam perspective, I've really wanted that kind of on camera flash, the Leica kind of aesthetic, you know,
Yep.
with the S9. And this is just a dummy cold shoe. There's no
Yeah.
connection on here. So again, forget all the video features. This is a cheap Z6 III that's basically the size of an S9. And if it has a on-camera flash and I throw a 28 millimeter 2.8 pancake on it, there you go. You got like a cheap Leica kind of that also shoots R3D with a giant screen.
Yeah. This camera is really cool, but one thing that I didn't really mention that this camera has going for it, unlike almost any other camera I've used over the last 2 years, and that's fun factor. I have
Mm.
not shot with a camera that's this much fun and so long, and so much of that is just the screen. It's wild how much more fun and better the experience is with this screen because it's 1,000 nits, but the detail is it's so sharp and so easy to see what you're doing. Fantastic colors, but and then it's just like it's built like an absolute tank. Like you can kind of throw it at anything and it's going to be rad. Like this camera's super fun to use.
That's awesome. And the we haven't even mentioned it either. I believe it's the first camera on the market that has 32-bit float with like through the mic jack,
Yeah.
not through an interface, which is what Panasonic's been doing.
I don't know
You
how
can
they're going
plug.
to do that. I don't know how it works, but yeah, apparently
Well,
you can just plug in a mic and you get 32-bit float.
Well, those Zoom recorders do it, you know, like with the XLR and stuff. And then I have the Tentacle Sync, recorders, the Track E's, and that's an
Yeah.
1/8
Yeah. Same.
32-bit float. So, they're doing it somehow with that, but that's great. And then I think you can even do 32-bit float with even just the little built-in mics without any mics, right?
Yep. And they have like I forgot what the thing is called, but they have the regular mics that pick it up and you can select there's like 4 or 5 different capsules on top of the camera, kind of like the ZV-E1. And then you can get really directional, but you can also turn on this like processing that makes it sound even better. And I've heard some of the internal mic super directionals, and yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, so I mean, this could really seriously be like a really great camcorder for dads out there, like dads who want to be extra.
Yeah, this is the ambitious dad cam.
Because you don't need. It's also weather sealed, unlike the S9. So this does lean more into the consumery vibe in terms of the size and the grip and all that compared to the C50. The C50 really does feel more like a production camera, whereas this you could put around your neck and throw that like retro 28 mil or the 40 mil f2 on it and just use it for the day with no microphones, just the built-in mics with these features you're talking about, including 32-bit float.
Yeah,
you can flip on video mode, shoot R3D at Disneyland with your kids, and then you switch over to photo mode and boom, you're taking the same image quality that you'd see on a Z6 III, which is one of their flagship cameras. So and it's $2,000. That's the thing that's nuts, is that they are really competitive here. So I would love to see OpenGate. I'd love to see some of these features that we talked about come to it, but I'd say overall pretty awesome and compelling camera, and I'm excited about it myself. I would love to get one.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope it. I really think they've made a really interesting camera where if they just make a few critical little additions, software wise, like I really see this being a not an FX3, but it could be an FX3 type of camera for them, where it like really changes the trajectory of the perception of what